everyone. Welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. We're officially in our second week of being live on YouTube. How about that? Here's to many more. Hopefully we'll be live for many, many weeks. It is Monday, February 19th, 2024. Today's President's Day. We don't have President's Day off here at the Salem Media Group, which, you know, for being a conservative media network, you would think that they would give us President's Day off. I'm actually not complaining. I love my job so much, so I'm actually thrilled when we don't have a day off. But again, you'd think the right-wing media company, we would all be at home, you know, praising the presidents, especially Republican presidents. By the way, I did a little segment on Timeless with Julie Hartman Live last week where I went through some data that I found online about various presidents. For instance, left-handedness. I discovered that a lot of what I would call outsider or shaker-up candidates like Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton were left-handed. I also discovered that a lot of my least favorite presidents are actually firstborns, and my favorite presidents are secondborns. So in honor of President's Day, I encourage you to check that out. Also, please do check out my show with Dennis Prager, Dennis and Julie. That is now every Sunday right here on this channel, the Julie Hartman YouTube channel, at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And then Timeless with Julie Hartman Live is at that same time, 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, but Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Julie.
Yes?
When I was growing up, we had Lincoln's birthday and Washington's birthday. And in school, you would get both those Mondays off, and it was awesome.
Wow, really?
You wouldn't like celebrate or anything, but at least you got the days off. You would look forward because you would get so many days off in February.
Wow.
And you have Valentine's Day. And then they combine the two to make it President's Day, and I don't think it means anything anymore.
They combined what?
I mean, you said we'd go home and celebrate. They combined Lincoln and Washington's birthday into President's Day. And now I don't think anybody. What do? You said you go home and celebrate the presidents. Come on, let's be honest.
I was saying that
they're not doing anything.
We conservative media group people should go home and like erect a shrine to Ronald Reagan on President's Day and praise the shrine of Ronnie.
But there's no traditions. What is there even a parade or anything?
I know, it's so sad. I really do. As I get older, I really am trying to appreciate the days, you know, when we have holidays, like actually when it's Martin Luther King Day, reflect on Martin Luther King. When it's President's Day, reflect on the president. So please trust that I have done an appropriate amount of reflection today, or maybe I'll do it later on my presidents. But nevertheless, happy President's Day, everyone. 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537. Let's, you know, start in some call-ins to this show. Maybe it won't get kicked off for a few more weeks, but hey, might as well throw it out there, right? But the chat is alive and well. By the way,
it's Bushashuru Day.
It is Bushashuru Day, yes. I half of me thinks explain the reference. The other half of me thinks drive people to the President's Day segment to get the reference. I'll give you a little teaser. It has to do with a certain Republican president vomiting while he was on a state visit, and a new word that was coined as a result of that in Japanese. Okay, I basically gave away the whole thing. I love it. I'm going to give you a little teaser, but then I just gave away the entire thing. I love seeing that the chat is alive and well, and you know, I did see, even before we went on the air, that there was a one Robert Florzak who had already entered the chat, and he is quoting a line from a movie that I saw this weekend, and he was a huge part. I mean, he was the entire reason that I saw this movie. I saw Casablanca this weekend. Now, I know that's not the way that you say it, but it's the way that one of the characters, Rick, says it. The protagonist of Casablanca, what's his name again? Oh, God, Robert's going to hate me right now. Humphrey Bogart, right?
Oh, my
I know.
God.
I'm so sorry.
Yes,
hey.
You said Humphrey Bogart, right?
Is that
Casablanca? You sound like you're in Minnesota. What are you doing?
Well, wait a minute. Humphrey Bogart's character, Rick, who owns the cafe in Casablanca, Morocco, he says it like that. I swear. People who are watching the movie, I want validation in this chat. I do. From people who have seen the movie, they know that's the way that Rick says it. But I, this weekend, saw that movie for the second time in my life. I saw it once when I was really little. And Robert Florzak is such a gem. I talk about him all the time on Dennis and Julie. He is a art historian. He's an artist, and he's become one of my dear friends. And he is always encouraging me to go see classic films. And I love reading. I've got 2 books right here. I'm going to quote from some of them today. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and then C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. I love reading. You can see right behind me somewhere I have The Scarlet Letter. But I'm not as big into film. And so Robert's really been trying to push me to see some classic film. He was on this show talking about Errol Flynn, who I understand was a very handsome, talented Hollywood actor back in the day.
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, yes. See, I'm going to see that film one day. I promise. But he has been hectoring me for several weeks now. Robert, he said, you got to go to a classic film cinema. You're in Los Angeles. You got to go. There's one in Hollywood that he wanted me to go to. And he said, you got to see these films on the big screen. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll see it sometime. But you know what? He said to me, we were on the phone, and he said, oh, you're not going to do it. Or he said, oh, you're going to disappoint me. And I viewed that as a challenge. So I went last night, everybody. I went to Hollywood.
Oh, you went to a theater?
I went to a theater. No, this is the whole story. I wouldn't even be telling you this if I just watched it at home. It's not an accomplishment to watch a movie at home.
Was the floor sticky?
No, the floor wasn't sticky, but the seats were highly uncomfortable. They were just regular movie theaters.
This was a whole experience.
This was a whole experience.
This wasn't Netflix and chill.
No, this was not. So last night, and it's raining here in Los Angeles. Last night, I got in my car. I hauled all the way to Hollywood, found parking, which I deserve a badge for, honestly. Got in line, waited in line for an hour, all by myself.
Wait, there was a line?
I did it all by myself. There was a huge line, and it was raining.
How many people were there?
Many.
Was the theater packed?
Well, there were a lot of people who bought tickets, and then there were a lot of people like me who didn't buy tickets ahead of time. And I got there at 5:30. The screening started at 6:30, and I was in line in the rain for an entire hour, all alone. But wait, this is important. I really actually want to tell people that I did this, to talk about how great the movie Casablanca is. I gotta stop saying it like that. Casablanca is. But, I think that we talked about this last week on Timeless. We were doing a show on why the world has had less sex. And I was talking about, reading a comment actually from the internet. People were commenting on this, how people are afraid to go out and do things. They're afraid to go out, especially alone, and meet new people. And that is really true. And I really endeavor to be a person who isn't like that. I'm trying to stretch my boundaries in life, not just as far as what I read or what I watch, but just doing things that are uncomfortable. And so I just want to tell people that having done it last night, it's really not as scary as you think. You think you're going to be in line and everyone's going to look at you and pity you because you're alone. Everybody's just thinking about themselves. No one cares. Nobody's looking at you. You think maybe you'll be lonely, but it was actually a really great experience. So people, go out, do things alone. It's my little
Wait, don't bury the lead.
sermon.
Don't bury the lead. What? Milk duds, jujubes, licorice, popcorn. What'd you do?
Popcorn with butter. Popcorn with butter. That was my dinner because it was dinner time. So I got a huge bag, made friends in line. These 2 sisters, one runs a nail salon, the other does Zoom college for the University of South Florida. And I said to her, it's so funny. Sometimes I have to hide what I do for a living because I don't want to make people uncomfortable, especially people who I'm standing in a line with for an hour in the rain. She was saying she does Zoom school in South Florida. And I said, oh, why aren't you there? Why are you doing Zoom school? And she's like, because it's Florida. And I said, what's so bad about Florida? And she's like, all the conservatives are there. And I'm like, Don't ask me what I do for a living. By the way, I have a way of getting around this. It's not that I'm ashamed of what I do. Clearly, I'm not. Put my face on the internet every day. But I don't want to make people uncomfortable. It's not worth the conflict.
Yeah.
And so I have a way around it. People go, what do you do? I go, media. And then usually that stops them because that's a little bit of an indicator. I don't want to talk about it. But then if they press, they go, oh, what kind of media? And then I'll say radio, podcasting. And then I have a rule of 3 strikes. The third time they press, then I'm telling. It's like I tried to not make you uncomfortable, but you keep pressing. So the third time I did it. Luckily, they stopped at the media thing. Anyway, I want to play 2 clips from Casablanca because we were also talking last week on Timeless about how we are in the age of the anti-hero. How there are so many films, TV shows, books, which celebrate people who do bad things and celebrate their bad actions. And this blossomed from a conversation we were having about the Netflix show Griselda, about Griselda Blanco, who was this Colombian drug lord. And Sean, of course, was reading a very, very long list on air of all of the various shows, Shameless, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Modern Family, et cetera, which celebrate the anti-hero. And what was really nice...
Modern Family was not on my list.
Was it not? I actually... No. I just threw that in there because I figured... I figured there's an anti-hero in Modern Family. You were thinking about
Sofia Vergara, like...
True. Oh, that's right. Yeah. She's in Modern Family.
How can you not?
That's true.
Yeah.
How can you not? It's true, especially if you're a straight guy. But yes, we were talking about the anti-hero. And one of the things that was so nice about Casablanca was seeing how the main character, Rick, he, throughout the film, he's kind of jaded. He's aloof. His heart is broken. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it. There's a woman that comes back into his life, and that's kind of the basis of the whole film. And the woman is dating married to the leader of a Nazi resistance movement. And they're all in Casablanca trying to escape the Nazis. But Casablanca is run by the French, and the France has been taken over by Nazi Germany, so the French are kind of in the pockets of the Nazis, and the Nazis are going after Rick, the shop owner, and et cetera, et cetera. People have seen it. They probably know what I'm talking about. But it was so nice because Rick, the main character, is very jaded throughout the whole film. So he's not perfect. When Sean and I lament this celebration of the anti-hero, we're not necessarily, or at least I'm not saying that every single character in every film has to be perfect, because that would be boring. Nobody in life is perfect. But this character ends up doing a very noble thing, which is that he facilitates the rescue or the escape of his beloved Ilsa and her husband, the resistance leader. They started dating because Ilsa thought that her husband was dead. And then it turns out that he escaped a concentration camp. He wasn't dead. And so Rick has the opportunity to save them. And instead of being selfish and taking the woman for himself and leaving the resistance leader out to dry, he does the noble thing and he allows them both to escape. So I want to show you 2 short clips and then I'll be done with talking about this movie until I see my next classic film, Alone in Hollywood.
There's so many famous lines from this movie.
I know. Well, that's one I saw in the chat. Here's to looking at you.
All right, I'll wait.
Wait, do you know others?
I Play It Again, Sam.
Yeah. Well, that's not...
Of all the gin joints in town, she walks into mine.
That was shocking to me watching that. I just thought that was a colloquialism.
This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship or something like that. I don't know them exactly. I could look it up, but I know there's a lot of famous lines.
There are a lot of quotable lines. But
there's the one guy goes, I'm shocked to find out that there's gambling here. Maybe not as famous, but it's a funny line.
No, that was one of the guards.
We'll always have Paris.
Yes.
All right. It's been a while.
No, I'm actually very impressed that you have a command of this. All right, I want to show you these 2 clips because you just look at this and you go, look at a man being a man and a man doing the right thing, a protagonist doing the right thing. It's clip 1. What a class act. Can you imagine how heartbroken he was? He didn't want to leave her, but he's helping her leave. And he said at the beginning, you are what you are part of what makes your husband work. He loves you, he's inspired by you, and that's what helps him move forward as leader of a resistance movement against this evil regime, the Nazis. What a class act. And then what I love, too, is that Rick not only lets Ilsa go, he clears Ilsa's name in the marriage with Victor. So essentially, he is telling Victor, she's in love with you, I don't want to be a factor in your marriage. Let's play that one clip. Okay, how many guys today do we see, A, in real life, and B, especially in TV and movies, who will go up to another guy and be like, yeah, I, slept with your bleep last night. She loves me. She doesn't love you. She wants to be with... That's what guys do now, and it's cool. It's cool to, act like you've got it, act like you've got the girl, and to stick it to your competitor. But this guy shows what a real man does, what a real class act does. And here's the thing I also want to say. The movie isn't boring. I think a lot of people have this idea that if a character does something good, if they're not the anti-hero, then the movie is just dull and dry and there's no excitement to it. No. the movie is very exciting. And I think it's very ennobling to see people do the right thing. I love looking at the chat, by the way. Sniff, sniff. I get emotional easy, LOL. Yeah, we have a few of us in here. Sean gets emotional easy. I get emotional easy, too. Easily, if I may. Humbly correct. Love that style. Clothes and car styles were amazing back then. Yeah, oh my gosh. Ilsa in the movie, she is so... Sometimes I look at that old fashion and it doesn't quite resonate. She is so pretty and chic. What was that, 1942 the movie was made? Fantastic.
Yeah, was the crowd loud? Did they react to certain things?
You know what was interesting? People laughed, and then when the movie was done, everybody clapped. There was a lovely sense of decorum in the theater. Yeah, it was nice. I by the way, Sir TDS didn't know Gavin Newsom is Julie's governor. Yeah, it's probably because I said Hollywood. Unfortunately, he is. Hopefully, he won't be my president, though, or any of our presidents. So that's Casablanca.
You know one of my favorite classic movies?
What? Tell me.
I bet you haven't seen it. Pootie Tang.
I have
Have you seen Pootie Tang?
I have not.
That's one you should go see in the theaters.
I feel like I'm being played right now. I feel like it's a really stupid movie that I wouldn't like, and Sean is going to send me on a magical mystery tour to go watch this movie. See, I trust Robert when he tells me to watch a movie. I don't trust Sean McConnell when he tells me the same thing. Okay.
I love me some Pootie Tang.
Okay, I want people in the chat to tell me the truth. Is this something that I should watch, or is this just Sean McConnell trying to play me? We'll see.
It's classic.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk about something far more serious than this, which is Alexei Navalny, because on Friday we heard the tragic news that Alexei Navalny died. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people who are saying, well, wait a minute, we don't know for sure if Alexei Navalny died. One of those people who actually is speculating is Alexei Navalny's wife, Julia, because she says that the Russian government plays all kinds of tricks. But I don't know. I don't know what you think, Sean. I think he's dead. I think that they just wanted to do away with him once and for all. Do you buy any of the theories that he may still be alive?
No, I told you a couple last week. I think he's dead. Yeah, of course. I think that they're hiding the body.
Yep. I think it's honestly, perhaps, especially after there's kind of been a reignited conversation about Russia in the West as a result of Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin, as a result of Putin coming out, making some comments about Trump versus Biden. Perhaps that was an impetus for them to want to do something. I have no idea, but I think it's pretty certain that Alexei Navalny is dead. He died at the age of 47. Which is so young. He has 2 kids. One of them, the oldest daughter, is actually a student at Stanford, or perhaps she graduated. But for those who are unaware of Alexei Navalny, he was this Russian opposition leader to Vladimir Putin's evil, corrupt, terrible regime. He was the leader of the Russia of the Future Party, and he actually ran for office a few times, but of course, Putin's government didn't allow that. And in 2020, he was poisoned. And he was treated in Germany. You know, it's just amazing how these things happen, right? Like Putin's opponents just all of a sudden crazily get poisoned very randomly, right? Nothing to see there. But he had to go get treatment in Germany. And they thought that there was no way that Navalny was going to go back to Russia. Why would you? If the leader of your country tried to poison you and would lock you up, why would you go back? But because he is a class act, certainly not an anti-hero, the epitome of a hero, he went back to Russia. But in the meantime, he made a documentary, which, in addition to Casablanca, I encourage all of you to see. It is so good. Have you seen Navalny, Sean?
No, I haven't.
So you want me to watch that weird film, but you haven't seen Navalny?
If you watch Pootie Tang, I'll watch Navalny.
For some reason, I know nothing about that movie. For some reason, this feels like an uneven trade. Feels like if you give me $1,000, I'll give you $5. It's just how it rings. Call me crazy. I've been down this road before with him. But you really should see Navalny. Everybody should see Navalny because he's talking about why he does what he does. And you see really behind the scenes of with him and his family. And the most riveting part of the documentary, I actually tried to find some clips to show here, but I couldn't find them on YouTube, is that he figures out which members of the FSB, which is the Federal Security Service, aka the KGB 2.0 in Russia. He finds out which members of the FSB poisoned him, were accomplices in his poisoning. And he calls them. I have no idea how he pulls this off, but he somehow gets to them. He gets them to admit on the phone that they poisoned Navalny, and then he reveals that he's Navalny. It is just absolutely riveting. But what I love about it is the whole time he, treats the issue with the seriousness and the gravity that it deserves. But he also has a terrific sense of humor and I love that balance because, yes, these people are evil and we need to treat that seriously. But in a way, they are such pathetic human beings that it's almost just more powerful to laugh at them. Like, you are scum of the earth if you're going to poison someone who is standing up for democracy. And Navalny's like, I'm just going to laugh at you. You don't even deserve my scorn. You just deserve my ridicule. So
it's on Max. It looks like it's on Max.
Yeah, it's really good.
I'll do it.
Yeah, thank you. You should. So yes, he died in an Arctic prison this past weekend. President Biden said, make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death, and I totally agree with him. Of course, the Russian story is that all of a sudden he fell ill, and within, just a few minutes he was unconscious, which is obviously total BS. But I just want to quickly show you two things. The first is this past weekend in Russia, there were a lot of people in Russia and all around the world, but especially in Russia, who were laying flowers for Navalny in an effort to memorialize him, commemorate him, and they were arrested because that's what happens in Russia. Look at this photo of this woman being carted away by these thugs, these absolute thugs, because she was just laying flowers for Alexei Navalny. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Barry Weiss, who runs the Free Press, excellent news organization, published and translated these letters that Alexei Navalny wrote when he was in prison to Nathan Sharansky. Mr. Sharansky was a Soviet dissident. He is famous for writing the book Fear No Evil, and he became an Israeli politician. And so they both know what it is like to be in the gulag in Russia for speaking out for freedoms.
That lady got arrested just for putting down flowers?
Yep.
Like arrested.
Arrested. And by the way, that's just one photo. Look it up. There are all these photos of these people being carted away. There were a few journalists who were arrested because they wanted to take video to show it to the Western world. No, you know what? We have no idea how lucky we are.
No, we don't. That's crazy.
This is what so bothers me. I could stop me because I could get on an entire rant about this for the whole show. But when I was in high school and college, and I wasn't as attuned to this in high school. I was certainly attuned to it in college. But when people would crap on America, I would be like, you have no idea. I tweeted this and people thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. I would like to raise a GoFundMe for all of these anti-American, pro-Hamas, Israel is committing genocide, the United States is systemically racist, patriarchal, heteronormative society. I want to raise a GoFundMe to send these people on a one-way, even first-class ticket to the countries that they think are so much better. Study abroad. I will fund their study abroad, their permanent study abroad. But it's like, actually, don't even get me started. And the only reason why they're tearing down America is they have the free speech to do so. When they're advocating for criminalizing hate speech, they don't realize they're so stupid that the only reason why they can even say such a thing, such as we should curb free speech, is because they have the free speech to speak and advocate for curbing free speech. What idiots. Beyond.
That's one of my favorite things to do, study abroad.
And why is that? I got it.
Oh, good.
5 seconds. I got it.
All right, back to the letters that were published.
You know why? I'm going to defend myself here. I knew I was missing something, but then I got it. I very rarely hear the term broad used.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah,
very rarely.
I felt weird saying it. Like, was that? They're going to come after me for using the word broad.
I will fund their study abroad. Yes, Tessa Jane. Thank you.
But
I'm glad you like this.
I had to go there for the joke. That's one thing you know about me. I always go for the funny.
It's funny. I never hear, maybe because I'm abroad, we never refer to ourselves as broads. Only you guys do. Is it now viewed as a derogatory term?
I would say so.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, it shows my purity that I was slow to the joke. I don't subscribe to derogatory terms, especially when it comes to women. No. So back to the real stuff, not the jokes. Great letters, seriously, published by the Free Press between Navalny and Sharansky, and they're talking about, freedom and maintaining a strong sense of health while you are in the gulag, which is probably close to impossible to do. But this is a quote from Navalny writing to Sharansky, and he's talking about Sharansky's book in which he argued that Russian people need to have a virus of freedom, and they have to protect themselves against the KGB from inventing a vaccine against this virus of freedom. But then Navalny writes, in the current situation, it is not Putin's government who are to blame, but us, he says. Quote, who naively thought that there was no going back to the old ways. And for the sake of good, it's okay to rig elections a little bit here, or influence the courts a little bit there, or stifle the press a little bit over here. These little things and the belief that it is possible to modernize authoritarianism are the ingredients of this vaccine. Whew. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. Wow, that is true. And we're seeing that right now in the United States. Obviously, we're not close to what it's like to live in Russia, even as bad as things are here. But we kind of look at things going on, and we're like, so what? 6 pro-lifers are put in prison for 10 and a half years for non-violently trespassing on an abortion clinic. The Biden administration colluded with big tech to remove anti-vaccine, pro-conservative, anti-Biden content from the internet. January 6th perpetrators are punished more harshly than Black Lives Matter perpetrators. We look at these things and we go, oh, yeah, it's fine. We'll just let it go. And it's what Navalny said. We think it's possible to modernize authoritarianism. Like, this is just the modern world. It's an overreach, but this is just kind of what we're in now. So it's a very good caution against all of that. Sharansky wrote back to Navalny, and this is really fascinating. He says, quote, I wish to you, no matter how hard it may be physically, to maintain your inner freedom. In prison, I discovered that in addition to the law of universal gravitation of particles, there's also a law of universal gravitation of souls. By remaining free in prison, you influence the souls of millions of people worldwide. I love that because Navalny's inner life is what allows him to triumph over the degradation and the abuse of the FSB and of Putin's regime. It's sort of what I was saying about when he's in that documentary laughing at the people on the phone who poisoned him. He's good on the inside. He's secure in himself. He is free from them on the inside, and that is what makes him have such power over him, because they can put him in shackles, they can put him in an Arctic prison, they can humiliate him, they can take him away from his family, but they can never, never, never influence his inner life, because he did such a good job of protecting that. And this reminded me of this great book, which I'm just giving out recommendations. In the first 30 minutes, I'm going Casablanca, Navalny, and Man's Search for Meaning. Really quick read, by the way. This is everybody should read this, especially because it's just easy to do so. And Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychologist who was a victim of the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz for several years, and he wrote a book about his experience and about man's search for meaning. And his whole thesis is that if you have a why, if you have a purpose, a meaning, you can bear almost any how. But one of the best parts of that book, when I read it, that always stuck with me, is when he talked about how he was able to maintain power over the Nazis. And it's the same thing that Sharansky advised Navalny to do. Viktor Frankl said it was that I held on to my internal life. And he said that, it was very easy to succumb to the degradation of the camp because they were treating us so horribly. I mean, the epitome of how terrible people can treat human beings. And Viktor Frankl wrote, they took away our hair. They took away our names. We were reduced to numbers. They took away our clothes. They took away our freedom. They took away the fat on our skin. Literally, we were stripped of everything. But he said the one thing that allowed us to triumph over them is if we maintained our sense of ethics and morality and sense of self. And Viktor Frankl wrote, I never stole a bread from a piece of bread from a fellow prisoner. I never lashed out at the guards. And it's not because I didn't want to, but it's because I knew that I needed to hold on to my moral core, or else that would be the only, if I let that go, then I would really become an animal. He said that was the one thing that was keeping me as a human being and not becoming the animal that they were treating me as. I'll just quickly read. Only those who allowed their inner hold on their moral and spiritual selves to subside eventually fell victim to the camp's degenerating influence, while those who made a victory of those experiences turned them into an inner triumph.
Frankl has one of my favorite and most meaningful quotes in life.
Mm-hmm.
The one about there are only two races.
The decent and indecent. Yep.
From all this may learn that there are two races of men in this world, but only these two, the race of the decent man and the race of the indecent man. Both are found everywhere. They penetrate into all groups of society. No group consists entirely of decent or indecent people.
I love that you read the full quote.
That's one of the most important quotes. Yeah, it's so. Once I heard that, it changed me forever. And I realized all of this arguing over race is ridiculous because that's the truth. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. As I said, I'm really glad you read the full quote because what he said there at the end, that no group has 100% decent people or 100% indecent people, all across various groups. It's scattered. That's so true. I mean, one of the things we'll be talking about today is this crazy funeral that was held at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. And it was so disrespectful. There were all of these transgender or LGBTQ individuals in drag getting up, and they were mocking the Lord's Prayer, and they were calling this person who was having the funeral the mother of all whores. Like, it was so awful. But you know what? You may expect my anger to be primarily funneled at those individuals, and believe me, there's a lot of that. But I'm actually more angry at the Catholic Church. I'm more angry at several Christians who allow this to happen. And so the point is, you look at religious people and you would expect like, oh, well, Christians would be the, greatest, or they would, certain people in society would be full of the decent. But no, you look, there are really bad Christians out there. There are really great Christians out there. Every single group has this scatter. But I just want to close this out by saying that, obviously none of us, thank God, are in the gulag. None of us are facing the kind of hell that Navalny faced or that Viktor Frankl faced. But there's something to take away from what they're saying, maintaining your inner life, maintaining your sense of morality. And I think right now in the modern world, it's very easy to succumb to jadedness. It's very easy to succumb to anger. It's easy to succumb to victimhood. You see people cutting corners or acting out in a lot of different ways, and you just think like, okay, I can do that too. But the way that you maintain your triumph, the way that you triumph over those degrading influences is by maintaining your own inner hold. And that's something that really inspires me, especially when it's tough to put your face on the internet, speak the truth, get vilified for it. That's one thing I go, okay, I need to be good on the inside, and I got to block out the noise. So God bless Alexei Navalny. I want to dedicate this whole show to him today, all the shows this week to him. He is the Viktor Frankl. He is the Anne Frank. He is the Solzhenitsyn in our time. And may we keep his legacy alive, never forget him. God, my heart breaks for his family, especially his kids. Can you imagine the horror, the pain that they have to go through imagining what their dad faced? On to another depressing, but in a different kind of way, but also a little bit comical story. This St. Patrick's Cathedral debacle. My gosh, are you guys aware of this? I want to look at the chat very quickly. But actually, before we close this out on Navalny, I've heard the quote, there's two kinds of people, the decent and indecent. Yep, people, this is resonating a lot. Need to find out who Viktor Frankl is. Oh my gosh, yes you do. You need to find out who Viktor Frankl is. But by the way, I'm not wagging the finger. I really, I never heard of him until very recently. Perhaps a year ago, 2 years ago. In college, I never really heard of him. I think at the end of college, someone recommended Man's Search for Meaning. But every single college student should know Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Viktor Frankl. among others. But oh my God, I mean, especially those two, the fact that most college kids, most Americans don't know their name is so sad. Gulag Archipelago, yes, Solzhenitsyn, and One Day in the Life of Ivan, I always get this last name wrong, Denisovich. See, I pronounce Casablanca wrong, and I pronounce a lot of other things wrong. I have read excerpts of that book. I've also read excerpts, of the Gulag Archipelago. By the way, shout out, I do a Thinker of the Month series with Spencer Clavin, and we did our most recent one on Solzhenitsyn to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Gulag Archipelago. Man's Search for Meaning was assigned reading for us in high school. Wow, Tessa Jane, I'm very jealous of you. Yeah, well, I'm really glad this is resonating. Thank you guys so much for watching, for staying active in the chat and keeping the chat classy. No anti-heroes in the chat. Okay, St. Patrick's Cathedral. This really could be an April Fool's joke. It is so absurd, and when you watch these videos, you could burst out laughing or you could get so angry. Let's do both for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Yours truly, after she got home from watching Casablanca last night, I went on the internet and looked up this funeral and watched the entire 1 hour live stream of this funeral. That is an hour of my life I will never be able to get back, but I did it for your benefit to find these excerpts to play of what happened. Okay, so what's going on here? There was a transgender, male-born, female transitioned woman named Cecilia, and it was an atheist and a sex worker. She died. She decided, or people around her decided, to have the funeral at none other than the very, 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 very famous Catholic Cathedral, St. Patrick's, on Fifth Avenue in New York City. St. Patrick's calls itself America's parish church. I've been to St. Patrick's many times. It is one of the most stunning churches you'll ever walk into. So many state funerals have been held there. Funerals of presidents, I believe, have also been held there. It's really just a very storied place. So they decided to have Cecilia Gentili, that's her name, her funeral at St. Patrick's. She was born in Argentina. She became a sex worker in New York City after moving illegally to the United States, and then she ended up getting citizenship. And in 2009, she was arrested and actually sent away to prison on Rikers Island for drug possession. And in fact, a judge had her released with an ankle bracelet because it was determined that she was not safe enough to be on parole without an ankle bracelet. Okay, so this is just to say this person has had a bit of a troubled past, but she seems to have rectified it. She did a lot of work trying to prevent the spread of HIV in the LGBTQ community. A lot of people were praising her for her advocacy of sex workers. I'm going to put my opinions on that aside, but the point is this was someone who was really lionized in the LGBTQ community. So she had her funeral at St. Patrick's, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was so disrespectful. It was crazy. And I am not saying this because the person whose funeral was trans. Okay, that has nothing to do with it. The thing that is so terrible about this funeral was how disrespectful the attendees were. Obviously there are all these questions that people have. Should a Catholic church even have someone, who's trans have their funeral there? I think yes. I mean, trans people, gay people are children of God. Yes, the church has historically, disapproved of such behavior, such lifestyle choices. Okay, we can put that aside for a moment, but I think that's not objectionable here. What is objectionable is not that a trans person is having a funeral there, but that the funeral turned into a really disrespectful, anti-Catholic, anti-religion spectacle. It was terrible. So we put up a picture of her, right? There was already a picture of her.
Yeah,
that's
I'm confused.
Her right there.
That's a picture of the person who died.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's not the funeral.
No, but the funeral was not so far off from the photo that you're seeing. So here's the thing. The funeral had an altar to this individual, and there were words written all around the altar. We have a picture of it right here. It's a little blurry, but it says whore, in Spanish, transvestite in Spanish, all of these kind of labels, which really I don't think belong in a church, especially the word whore. And yeah, that's honestly the least of it. Let's start playing clips from this actual funeral, because that is what is so bad about it. They got up. They were celebrating the fact that she was a whore. They called her the mother of all whores. They were celebrating what she did for sex work. And they were purposefully mocking many elements of the church ceremony. Let's start, though, with the priest of St. Patrick's, or at least the priest who was charged with leading this ceremony, who said that this woman, an atheist, died in Christ. And he seemed to be kind of pandering to the crowd. Clip 5.
Well, welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral. Except on Easter Sunday, we don't really have a crowd that is this well turned out, you know?
Hilarious. Hilarious. What was that? Did you see that? Like, what are you trying to do, dude? Does that look like church decorum to you?
Maybe we should move to a funeral service, no mass.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
So after that, we do the final commendation, we go.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Good.
Let us pray.
Yes, let us pray.
A God whose nature is always to forgive and to show mercy, we humbly implore you for your servant Cecilia, whom you have called to journey to you. And since she hoped and believed in you, grant that she may be led to our true homeland to delight in its everlasting joys.
I love how
This
all
is
that happens.
crazy.
And he goes, let
I don't
us
know
pray.
if you know this.
Yeah.
My grandparents are staunch Catholics, were staunch Catholics.
Yeah.
I grew up, I was an altar boy in
You
the Catholic
were?
Church. I
Aw.
was. And I can't imagine this happening. But I'm
it's
torn
crazy.
but people need to have funerals, and if there's a priest that's willing, and didn't the Pope recently say he was going to bless same-sex marriages? The Catholic Church is not the Catholic Church I grew up in. Let me just say that.
Right. And
I'm used to seeing this cathedral at like stately funerals of ex-presidents or anything. I've never seen it like that. That looked like I don't know. I'm thinking about going back.
I think it's just such a comical juxtaposition. Like, it literally could be in a TV show of like a holy priest and then all of these drag queens in the pews, and he's trying to go like, this hasn't been so crowded since
let us
Easter.
pray.
Oh yeah,
That
let us
cracked
pray.
me up.
Let us pray indeed, Father.
I'm not transgender, Julie, but
Really?
I've thought about what my stage name would be if I
dear
became
God.
transgender. I have two choices. One, Rachel N. Justice, or Misinformation.
Misinformation. I love that one. I love that one. That is so funny. Can we change Shanzi Cam to misinformation for the rest of the show? That is so, oh my God, that is so funny. But like, okay, I want to follow up on what you said though, because I don't object at all to having a trans person have a funeral in a Catholic church. I'm not Catholic. I mean, I was baptized in the Catholic Church. My mom's Catholic. My dad grew up Lutheran. I didn't grow up in a religious home. I'm trying to find myself religiously. So I would really love to hear the opinion of like an avowed Catholic on this. But for me, I don't think it is against church doctrine, nor do I personally oppose having a trans person have a funeral in a church, because a trans person is just as much a child of God as all of us are. That's not what I'm opposing. Now the Catholic Church may disapprove of, certain lifestyle choices of transgender individuals, but that person is still a person. And I don't think a lot of Catholics would object to a trans funeral. What I am objecting to here is the decorum of said funeral.
I'm trying to picture like my grandparents who would very devout. They would go every morning at 6:30. They
Same
were
with
very
mine.
devout. My grandmother was a nun and then left the church. Who can say their grandmother was a nun? Very few people. But I'm thinking back to my days when I was an altar boy and my mom was leading the choir, and that older generation, that older Catholic, they have died and passed on at this point. And they would, I think, agree with you, they would have been horrified by the decorum inside the church.
The decorum is the main problem that I think many Catholics have with this. So let's go on and look at some of this decorum. So we're really scheduling these videos starting with like the light stuff, and it's about to get way worse. But this is somewhere on the scale, like maybe like a 3 or 4 compared to what you're about to see. But this was one of the prayers, what I would call a woke prayer.
We'll continue now with the prayers of the faithful.
For Cecilia, who will be nourished at the table of the Savior, that may she be welcomed into the halls of heavenly banquet, and as she will welcome us all, we pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
And may Cecilia's community be loved and received and seen by each other, and have access to life-affirming health care and God's protection with secure housing. We pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who was full of love. Lord, hear our prayer.
So essentially that's just adding whatever you want the prayer to say instead of actually following what the prayer says. Now let's go on to really the big parts of the funeral. One of them was a eulogy to Cecilia, and it praised her sex work.
Y'all know what we about to do, right? Repeat after me. Cecilia! 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 Ladies and gentlemen, Cecilia was born in 1972, but this lady worked so hard to make sure girls like me, girls like you, boys like you are safe, are grounded, are rooted, got health care, that sex workers are free.
Yep, in a Catholic church. In
I
a
love
Catholic
this,
church.
that in this environment, he used the phrase ladies and gentlemen.
Totally. Oh, totally. And this person who I'm assuming she looks trans. Ladies like me, you know, like, I'm sorry, you're not a lady. Like, it's just the whole thing. The whole thing is just a thumb in the eye to church doctrine and to the values of the church. And again, I just want to reiterate, I don't have a problem with a trans person having a funeral in a Catholic church. The thing that I do have a problem with is the celebration of things that are totally antithetical to church values and the decorum, which we're about to see more of, you know?
And I don't have a problem with the celebration either. They should have a funeral. They should have a celebration of Cecilia's life. But you're saying inside a Catholic church is not the place.
And talking about sex work, and as we're about to see, her promiscuity, like, those are antithetical to church values. And frankly, even saying the whole, you know, ladies like me, like, that is also antithetical to church values. And I just don't understand why, the church would allow a funeral to be held where most of the attendees of the funeral don't like the church or don't like the values of the church. And why would the attendees of the funeral who don't like the values of the church want to have it at a church? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so
no, good point.
What St. Patrick's is saying is that they didn't know. And here's the thing that's so damning about that. Really? You didn't know? And they were saying that the only information that they got was that a Catholic wanted to have a funeral there. Okay, let me tell you something about St. Patrick's. It is not one of those places where you just, like, an anonymous person can apply to have a funeral. I would love to have my funeral at St. Patrick's. I'm sure a lot of people would. But it is on Fifth Avenue. It is one of the most famous churches in the world. I am sure there is a very rigorous vetting process and consideration process for who they allow to have funerals there. This is not like your local Catholic church where if a member of the church died, they can have, they can very easily get in and have a funeral there. They have to be selective. So I could be totally wrong on this. If evidence comes out that proves that I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say that I'm wrong. But I right now am not buying this narrative that they just didn't know. They knew.
I have 2 points, if I may. One, can you imagine the outrage and protest that would have happened had the church said no?
Right. Yes.
And 2, I stopped going to church because I didn't feel worthy that I was up to the standards of the church. And now I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, what am I thinking? I should just go.
Right.
That was honestly why I stopped going. I felt sinful. I felt like I wasn't living up to the standards of a holy Catholic. I've always felt like that. And that's part of the reason I stopped going. There's shame involved with not being a good Catholic.
Right.
And I've carried that around. I don't know, maybe I'm sharing too much, but to me it's
please.
like that's why I stopped going, because I didn't feel worthy. But then now there's stuff like this going on. This is a good topic, Julie. Way to go.
No, what was the first point you made? I'm following the second point.
Imagine if the church had said, no, you can't have the funeral here. There would have been outrage.
Right. Well, this is the thing. The church, as I said, a lot of my anger about this situation, or a lot of my disapproval of this situation, is far more funneled at the Catholic Church than it is by the individuals who came in and were so disrespectful. Because the modern day American church is so afraid of offending people that they have just allowed anything goes. I mean, and I think what they're trying to do is, one of the things that is so beautiful about Christianity is that it is a home for people who don't know where to go. I mean, Dennis and I talk about this all the time on Dennis and Julie. We talk about Christianity versus Judaism. And I always say that one of the biggest strengths of Christianity is that you have Christ to go to. You can be the most wayward person. You can be literally like homeless, drug addict, alcohol abuser in a, three-time convicted felon in a gutter. And you can go to Christ and you can be forgiven if you choose a better life. I love that about Christianity. But I think that they have taken this idea of forgiveness, this idea of welcoming, which are very good things, and they've just let it loose. I often talk on this show about Friedrich Nietzsche, who is I always get my centuries confused, a 19th century German philosopher. And I view him as like half brilliant, half very dangerous and crazy, but a broken clock is right twice a day. And one of the things that he wrote about Christianity is that you know how Karl Marx wrote that there are these internal things about capitalism that will lead to its demise? Friedrich Nietzsche essentially said that about Christianity. He said Christianity celebrates weakness by putting God on the cross. It celebrates suffering and victimhood. It takes this whole ideal of equality too far. Friedrich Nietzsche said people aren't equal. Some people are smarter. Some people are more noble. Some people are, faster runners. Now, I disagree with a lot of what Nietzsche says. I actually think it's a beautiful thing about Christianity that they put God on the cross and that God comes and suffers with us. I think it's a beautiful thing that everyone is equal in the eyes of our Creator. But he raises, I think, an indisputable point that these things in Christianity, if allowed to run loose, actually are perversions of Christian doctrine, and I think undermine Christianity. And right now, the modern day American church doesn't stand for anything because they are so afraid of offending people. What they should say is, look, we will have a funeral for a trans person. Again, trans person is just as much a child of God as anybody else. But what we will not allow is decorum to be disrespected. And we will not allow people to go up and talk about sex work and whoredom and, subvert our prayers and mock Ave Maria, which you're about to see. That's not what we will allow. Whatever happened to, they don't want to offend people. We want to show that everybody's welcome. Come on. And you know what also drives me crazy? So, can you imagine if Cecilia or her family went to a mosque and asked for a funeral service to be held at a mosque? What do you think would happen? Take a guess. They would say no. And in most Muslim majority countries, someone like Cecilia would have been dead a long time ago. So what drives me absolutely crazy is the church, as you say, Sean, would have been, totally like protested, called evil if they had refused this funeral. But then if a mosque would refuse this funeral, they don't even ask a mosque. They already know the answer. Nothing happens, right? There was also a news story. I want to pull it up. I think I have a picture of it here. Picture 4. There was a news story this past weekend which said that Muslim families in a Minneapolis area school district can opt their children out of LGBTQ lessons. So let me get this straight. The rest of us are bigots if we want to not have our 5-year-old learn about what transgenderism is. But Muslims aren't. That is the double standard that drives people crazy. Let's look at the chat. I'm a little afraid. Let's see. Church is a hospital for sinners. Oh, that's a great one. Yes, church is a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. Well said. Very, very, very well said. Thank you. You're an amazing role model. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Esteban.
Oh, I thought they were talking to me.
Well,
they were talking about you?
Let's see. Sezzy, can you please comment if you were talking about me or Sean?
Oh, we know the...
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't dare go near Islam with their wokeism. It's true. Yeah. Boy, so the church is held to a different standard, right? But it's they don't even go in the first place to ask a mosque if they would do this. Okay, let's continue with this funeral. So we did the eulogy about sex work. Let's look at another eulogy where the deceased is called the mother of all whores.
Esta puta, esta gran puta. This whore. This great whore. Saint Cecilia. Mother of all whores.
I wish we could zoom into the face of the priest right now. It's so disrespectful. You know what that's the equivalent of? That is the equivalent of going into someone else's home and tearing their furniture apart and peeing on their carpet. That is what the equivalent is. You are going into someone else's place and you are disrespecting them by making a mockery of their values.
No, not only that, that's why they're giving a standing ovation and cheering, because they know they're doing that.
Of course.
That's
absolutely.
Why. Oh.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
And here's the thing, like, even if I can imagine that a lot of the people in the audience hate Christianity and hate the Catholic Church. I'm making an assumption. I could be wrong. Call me crazy. That's what I think. And I would also suspect that they think that there's something like defiant and ennobling and cool and fighting the patriarchy by going into a house of worship and making a mockery of that house of worship to stick it to Catholicism. I can't imagine being so narcissistic as to do that. I can't imagine going into, even if I disapproved of that place, and doing that. Again, it's literally like going into someone else's home and just messing up their whole house. Why would you just don't go into the home?
No, this is one of our recurring themes. We've talked about this a lot. It is infinitely easier to tear things down.
Yes.
Than it is to build things up.
Yep. But it shows you the conceit.
And they're relishing in the disrespect.
But it shows you the conceit. Like, there are people, there are institutions that I don't like. I wouldn't ever picture myself going in and wanting to purposefully make a mockery of that place. Especially something like Christianity, which of course has not always been perfect, dear God, but has been one of the greatest, if not the greatest, forces for good to ever exist in the world. Okay, let's go on. But really, we actually shouldn't even brush over that so fast. They're laughing. They're calling her the mother of all whores. By the way, like, I don't understand what they even think is so ennobling about that. Why would you, can you imagine at your funeral, would you want to be praised as the mother of all whores? Like, why is that cool? Sean's like, yeah, I would. All right, let's go to a final video, and this is what happened during Ave Maria.
Ave Maria,
Twirl. Twirling. You'll see in a minute. Interpretive dance during Ave Maria. Twirl.
So we do a final commendation.
Sure.
Why don't we do the Our Father and the final commendation?
Okay. Yep.
So we go to the Our Father.
Okay.
And we do the final commendation.
Okay. Let us stand and offer our praise to Almighty God and pray as the Lord Jesus taught us.
I'm sorry, but just the juxtaposition of that is so funny. Like, twirl Ave Maria. Let us pray as the Lord Jesus taught us.
I feel like someone stuck their chocolate in the peanut butter. Like, have you ever had a peanut butter and pickle sandwich?
I have not, and I really don't crave it. I got to tell you,
It's
I really don't crave it.
surprisingly good, but that's a peanut butter and pickle sandwich.
Yep. Well, they're quite literally drama queens. I mean, literally. Like, they just want attention. I mean, why else would you do that? Again, can you imagine just being in a ceremony and wanting to do that? I can't. TLDR, the Catholic Church needs to stand up for itself. The Catholic Church needs to say this decorum is not allowed. You're not going to come in here and talk about whoredom and talk about sex work. This is not what we approve of. They should have cut that out right then and there, or certainly beforehand. And it's just, you know, now we live in a country where it is ennobling and defiant and cool to mock something instead of arguing against it based on the merits of your own argument. We see this with Maxine Waters, right? Maxine Waters is like, if you see members of the Trump administration, create a crowd around them, make them feel unwelcome. It's this exhibitionist, you got to get in their face culture, and I think it's terrible. I want to hear what you think, though. Please do leave a comment down below. I know that the chat has been very active. I wish I could read all of the comments, but alas, I can't. But what I can do is tell you a bit about MyPillow. I use a lot of MyPillow products. I wear my slippers, I sleep on a MyPillow, and I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount too if you use the promo code Hartman. Now, obviously, MyPillow is known for the pillow, but they didn't stop at the pillow. They also created the Giza Dream bed sheets. As I said, I sleep on them. They look great. They feel great. They're ultra soft. They're breathable, and they come in a variety of sizes and colors. You can get them for 50% off, as low as $29.98 with the promo code Hartman. They come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square and use the promo code Hartman. There you will get not only this great offer, but also deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow 2.0 mattress topper, MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and now even flannel sheets, and so much more. 1-800-566-6745. Use the promo code Hartman.
So, Julie, would you like to take your very first phone call?
Sure. Who is it?
You have a phone call from Bob in Atlanta, Georgia.
Hi, Bob.
Let's see if we can get Bob on here.
Am I on?
Bob's on. Hi, Bob. Welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live.
Hi, Julie, and misinformation.
What's your question,
hey, Julie.
Bob?
Hey, Julie. So I'm a new listener. I heard Dennis Prager mention your name in his Prager Fireside chat a few weeks ago. And I've been catching up on Dennis and Julie, too.
Oh.
And you guys talk about being deep or thinking deep, and just the lack of deepness we have in society. How would you define being deep?
It's a very good question. I would define being deep as thinking about life beyond just stage one thinking. Tom Sowell coins this term stage one thinking, and he talks about it with regard to political issues, like, for instance, the border. He says people tend to look at immigration with stage one thinking. Of course, we should, let people in. But then if you go past stage 1 to 2 and 3, you start thinking about the consequences, and then you realize that stage 1 is kind of a primitive way of looking at things. I would apply that, but to life more generally. Really thinking about the kind of person that you want to be, improving yourself, the kind of life that you want to live, looking at having different hobbies, having different interests, being curious. I think a deep person is someone who wants to explore a lot of different things in life, think critically about things, and not just stay in their narrow box of what's comfortable to them.
Do you think you've dug deep enough to find a true meaning of being deep?
No, I don't.
Do
That's me.
Levels?
I am so hard on myself. I never think I'm digging deep enough. What was that second question?
He said, do you think there's different levels?
Oh, of course. I think there are gradations of depth. Absolutely. I mean, someone like Dennis, I think, is perhaps many levels deeper than I am, but I'm trying to get there. But I in general, would really define it again as a sense of curiosity and wanting to push the boundaries in life. That's something that I said earlier about wanting to see Casablanca. Just expand my boundaries as far as what I learn and as far as doing things that I'm a bit uncomfortable with. But I really appreciate that question, Bob, because I think that it raises the idea that Dennis and I need to define our terms, when we're talking about these things. I'd be curious to know in the chat how people would define deep. Sean, do you have a different or supplementary definition of depth? Can't hear you.
Oh.
By the way, great first call. Thank you, Bob, in Atlanta. Classy, and B, really asking an amazing question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, critical thinking, trying to elevate the things that you do. Deep, to me, means that you're thinking about things, you're processing things.
Going
you're
beyond
simply
stage
not
one.
Parroting or squawking whatever you saw over here and spewing it out. We have so much of that going on. And so, yeah, you are deep. Dennis is deep. I don't know how deep I am, but
you are.
I try to critically think, and I use humor to maybe show my wit that way. But yeah, we need more deepness. I think we've lost that. We've become our attention spans are shorter. We're distracted by everything in the world, and we would do better off to process information and think before we open our mouths.
That's what I was saying about going beyond stage one.
And you answered it right. I mean, Tom Sowell, very deep, and he talked about stage one thing. That was a great answer.
Yeah, it's stretching the boundaries. Let's see. Oh, live stream died? Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. We're going to have the full version posted later. We always do that. But speaking of depth, I want to talk about a book that I'm reading just for a few minutes. It won't be long, but I read so often because I'm endeavoring to be a deep person. I'm endeavoring to stretch the boundaries, consider things that I wouldn't otherwise consider, and not just kind of stay comfortable in my worldview. And so I was thinking that a feature of this new live show would be that I could come to you and tell you some of my impressions of some of the things that I'm reading. And right now I'm reading the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And by the way, I wanted to talk about this today, even before I knew about this whole St. Patrick's story. But I think it's so apropos to talk about this book, which is about how to combat degrading influences in a religious way, alongside, literally on display, degradation of religion. So I really recommend this book. I'm sure many people in the chat are going to go, oh my gosh, Julie, you've waited this long to crack into this one, but it is so good. Basically what it's about, and by the way, another really fast read, like Man's Search for Meaning. What it's about is a devil or a senior demon named Screwtape, writing letters to his nephew Wormwood, who is a junior tempter. And they essentially are going after the souls of people to try to win over those people to the demonic side and away from God, Christianity, and religion. So that's why it's called the Screwtape Letters, because Screwtape the whole time is writing letters to Wormwood. I love books like this because it's fiction, it's fun, it kind of allows you to consider things in a different way, and it's not just like dry theology. Not that I find all theology dry, but you understand what I mean. And so there are just a few things I want to highlight for you, but one of the first ones is that C.S. Lewis actually says, speaking as in the character of Screwtape, again, the demon, he says, quote, One of our great allies at present is the church itself. That's the demon speaking. One of our great allies at present is the church itself. The demon is saying, like, the church in many ways is our friend because they allow bad stuff to happen, or they give a actually bad version of Christianity to people, and it makes people more likely to turn away from Christianity and towards us. And again, how apropos, given what we just saw, where the Catholic Church, St. Patrick's, was allowing people to get up and talk about whores and sex work and, twirl during Ave Maria. This is what the devil or the demon in the Screwtape Letters is saying, quote, all your patient, that is the person who the devil is trying to win over, all your patient sees is the half-finished sham Gothic erection on the new building estate. Essentially saying, like, the church right now is just like a half form of what the church should be and could be. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But there's two observations I really have so far in the book, and I'm about a quarter to a third of the way done. And they're basically about the kind of ways that we in the modern world convince ourselves that God is not worth our time, or perhaps that religion doesn't exist. And this is something that fascinates me because so many people in my generation just totally turn their backs on religion. They, don't believe in it, and they think that it is this defective thing. And so I often ask the question, why is this? And obviously it's because there's been a massive amount of chatter about religion. We've been taught this. It's been inculcated in us that religion, and especially Christianity, is something bad. But I also think that there are other things going on. And by the way, too, when you hear people, just a little tip I've learned through a few years of having conversations with people about religion. When people say that, religion isn't for me, or religion is heteronormative, it's patriarchal, it's terrible, it doesn't help you. When people say that, you should ask them one question. Have you read the Bible? Or maybe two questions. Have you been to church? And oftentimes, 99% of the times I've asked people this, they go, no. And I'll say to them, well, then how can you be so sure that this thing isn't for you and that this thing is so bad if you haven't even tried it? Like, imagine if someone went, yeah, I don't like pasta. Pasta isn't for me. It sucks. It tastes bad. It doesn't taste like anything. And all people who like pasta are stupid. You would ask that person, well, have you tried it? And if they said no, they would know that they're an idiot and you would know that they're an idiot. But somehow different rules apply when it comes to religion. It's okay. A person can have a very strong, fully formed opinion on religion, and especially Christianity, without ever having consulted with it. If people read the Bible, they go to church, they want to have an opinion about it, I will listen to them. But I don't like this certainty without even diving into it. So I think there's some things at play with the chatter, right? How in vogue it has become to be anti-religious. But there's something else that C.S. Lewis highlights that I think is so true. And it's what I call man-made bias, or what C.S. Lewis calls real-life bias. So Screwtape, the demon, is writing about how there's this guy who he's stalking, essentially, this British guy who's reading the Bible. And he's trying to figure out, how do we get that British guy away from reading the Bible and more towards what we want him to be, away from Christianity and towards our demonic influences. And what Screwtape says is we just have to put him in the real world. And he says he tries to make the guy think that he's hungry, craving lunch. He says we got to get this guy out on the street, so he sees a newsboy shouting the midday paper, a number 73 bus going past. Essentially, he said we need to get him out of reading the Bible and into the real world, because real life is the best distraction away from the spiritual. And he says that the familiar is and the ordinariness of life keeps us away from God. And so again, that's what I call man-made bias. Think about it from the perspective from a lot of modern people. We look all around us and we see things that are man-made. The camera I'm looking at is man-made. The buildings that we're in is man-made. The couch I'm sitting on is man-made. Skyscrapers, cars, planes, electric toothbrushes, TVs, phones, literally everything that we look at on a day-to-day basis is done by human beings. And so I think we get this idea that the spiritual, godly realm doesn't exist because we look around and we have this real life bias. That's why this demon wants to take this British guy out of the realm of the Bible and into the real world, because just looking around at the real world, he is going to become convinced that that is all that there is. And so I think it would behoove us to remember that as much as we look around and see man-made things, there's this huge spiritual world, I think, going around all around us. Like, even think about the people 500 years ago, before skyscrapers and phones and cars and airplanes. When they walked out of their homes or their shacks or whatever people lived in back in those days, maybe I should say 1,000 years ago instead of 500, they'd look outside and what would they see? They'd see the sun, they'd see the moon, they'd see hills. That's most of what they would see was not made by them. It was made by God, or it was a feature of earth. And so they were more attuned to the fact, I didn't make any of this. This must be done by a creator. But we look around and we go, yeah, people made all of this, so there must be no creator. We're the creator. What do you think, Sean?
There's so much. I mean, we don't have so much time to go through all this. I'm triggered by the title of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. I think we try to put meaning into all these things around us. I know C.S. Lewis has another book called Mere Christianity, which you probably should read next.
I have read that.
What you triggered in me was the truth of the Bible. If you don't have an agenda and you don't want to tear down the Bible or twist its meaning for your edification or argument, the truth of the Bible that is within those pages has withstood 5,000 years of man or woman, humankind.
Or broads.
It will continue to, and I don't care how religious you are, if you are a thinking person, you have to acknowledge that truth has withstood. You also triggered in me that when you go out into nature, this is where I find God, the truth in the Bible, out in nature, and in other human beings. And none of those things are man-made.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
no, it's true.
I don't... Yeah, that's what you triggered.
Well, you also, you look around at the world and you think, how did life emerge from non-life? Like, people say, science and evolution. But I don't think science and religion are incompatible. I actually think in many ways they're quite compatible. But evolution may explain how we evolved from the more primitive species, but it doesn't explain how we emerged. How did life just blossom from non-life? That argues for the existence of a creator. And people who say, science will explain one day how life emerged from non-life, they have a kind of faith. Their faith isn't in God, but their faith's in science. I could go on and on about this book. We don't have a lot of time, but I will just end on one final thing, which is that C.S. Lewis is talking about, again, taking the form of the demon. He's saying that God, quote, refuses to carry them, that is, everyday people, to any of the goals which he sets before them. He leaves them to do it on their own. And herein lies the demon's opportunity. And I loved that because it made me realize God gives us the free will to reject him. He doesn't get in our faces and go, you got to believe. I mean, he created us, if you believe in God, and I'm on the way. I don't know exactly what I believe, but I'm certainly on the way. He could have created us to be robots. He could have created us to have a fixture in our brain, as we have the left lobe, the right lobe. They could have had the God lobe of you undoubtedly believe in God and follow him always. But no, God gave us the free will to reject him. And I love that the devil in this book says that's our opportunity, because it can force people to go away from that choice of following goodness and truth and beauty, shy away from that opportunity and towards more degrading influences. Can you imagine? I'm only a quarter of the way into this book. Come back to me in a week. The whole Timeless Live will be like, and then on page 20, and then on page 100, da-da-da-da. I'll probably have a lot more to say about this, but I want to know your thoughts.
I feel like that is the ultimate arrogance for one individual to believe they can comprehend and they know better than all that came before them.
Yes. It's really arrogant.
That's part of faith. That is part of, you are not meant to understand it. You are not capable of understanding it. And if you think you do, oh boy, talk about not deep.
Yep. Well, that's why I call it timeless. 5,000 years of human civilization has produced some conclusions, and we're very arrogant to think that we need not pay attention to what those are. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Sean, as always, for your lovely input and your humor. Thank you to the chat and to our first call, Bob, in Atlanta. I will always remember you as the first Timeless with Julie Hartman live call, and maybe you'll even see that question come up again on Dennis and Julie. What does it mean to be deep? Isn't that what I'm endeavoring to answer in every single episode? Yes, it is. I'll see you soon. Take care.